that we do in church. We talked about when do we stand and why we stand. We talked about when do we kneel and why do we kneel. We talked also when do we sit down and why we sit down. So other than kneeling and standing and sitting down, there are a few more movements that we see in church. One movement that we see is we see what we call a procession or a circuit. And you'll see that there are movements where the priests and deacons go around the altar and around the church in every liturgy several times. And we see special processions for special occasions. So, let's for example, before I talk about different processions, what is the objective of procession? What's the objective of procession when Abuna goes around, or when the deacons go around? It's a celebration, Whenever you have a procession, it's a celebration. It means that the good news is spreading. The church represents here the body of Christ. So when you have something all over the church, that means that the good news is being spreading all over, rather than just being. Of course, our focus is always the altar. That's why we're always looking. But from the altar, we begin a procession, and then we take the blessing from the altar and spread all over. Okay, that's why every procession starts from the altar. Okay. For example, in maybe 15 minutes ago, we had the circuit or procession of the Vespers, and Abuna goes and says blessings of incense of Vespers be with you. The same thing we do in Matin. The same thing we do when we read the epistle according to St. Paul, when the deacons are singing Hitanis. The same thing we do during the Praxis, slightly different path. But always you'll see we start with 3 times around the altar, and then Abuna goes around the church. And all this procession, there's a common thread. Whenever we start moving, Abuna moves in one direction always. Can anyone guess which direction Abuna moves in? You got 2 choices. It's not east-west. Huh? North? No. Has nothing to do with east-west, north-south. To the right, yeah. Always. So when Abuna starts procession, he goes to the right. And he comes out of the altar, he goes to the right. Always to the right. Always to the right. And what's the significance of the right? What does the right represent? Symbolically. Huh? Good. Also, we talk about the right hand. What do you talk about? Sorry for nothing against any lefties, but the right hand. What's the right hand? Like Jesus said, at the right hand of God, and His right has done mighty things. Power, strength. So always the right represents symbolically strength, power, God. Even He said in judgment He would put the sheep on the right and the goats on the left. Always the right represents here the power. So this is a celebration of power. We take power from the altar, and then it spreads all around. So in any liturgy, we'll find a circuit or dawra in Vespers, Ashaya, in Matins in the morning, and in the Epistle of St. Paul, and the Epistle and the Praxis. Also, when Abuna reads, when Abuna says the litany of the Gospel, he goes and makes one circuit, and with processing with the Gospel. Again, the Gospel here, we are celebrating the good news. It's a good news. The word Gospel itself, Evangelion, or Ingil in Arabic, in Greek Evangelion, comes from the same root as angel. He brings good news. We're celebrating good news. And it's a celebration. He carries how did the deacons get me the gospel? He celebrates I'm sure you have seen this before. Yeah, see the gospel here. It's a nice case, metal case. Inside it, there's nothing other than the gospel. That's why we call it the gospel. It has inside, wrapped in a white cloth, is the gospel. At least the New Testament and the Psalms. If you can fit the Old Testament, yeah, but it's kind of small. So any time you see the deacon holding this and gives it to Abuna carries it, and he carries it on his head, saying that this is something I'm celebrating. And the word of God always surpasses the human mind. So it's a celebration of the gospel. These are the usual processions that we do every single liturgy. But there are some special occasions. On these special occasions, we have special processions. We don't just have Abuna and maybe one deacon around the altar. Then we have the whole chorus of deacons singing around. We just came out of Nahda. We had the Zaffa every single night. But let's begin with the more important occasions. Of course, we have some feasts that have a procession in them. Can anybody remember any feast that has special procession? I see the same people answering all the time. Somebody else, one of the girls, don't know any? Processions. What's the famous procession? Easter and resurrection. Easter, resurrection. Now we're celebrating the risen Christ. We're celebrating the resurrection of Christ, and we do that procession for almost 40. We do it for 40 days. 40 days all over the church, 10 days inside the altar, because the time between Ascension and Pentecost, Jesus was in heaven, and the apostles didn't see him. But we do celebration inside the altar, inside the altar. But for 40 days we do, and starting from Easter night, we do the resurrection. It's this is the procession of all processions, the resurrection procession. It's very festive and very joyous. What other procession we do? Palm Sunday. Well, actually, we do the same on Palm Sunday and the Feast of the Cross. Two times a year, Feast of the Cross. One of them is coming up in towards the end of September, which is 17th of Tut. You know, Tut first comes on September 11th. It's hard to forget that. Tut first. So add 17th. So roughly about September 28, 28, something like this, is the Feast of the Cross. And we have the same procession, and also comes in around March 21st. I think it's about 10th of Baramhat. It comes the feast, other feast of the cross. So I have two feasts of the cross and Palm Sunday. We do the procession where we actually stop at every at certain icons, certain stations in the church, and read the gospel. It's a very special procession in its own right. Palm Sunday. We also have a procession on the eve of Palm Sunday as well. But so there are two processions for Palm Sunday. What else? Nairuz, yeah. Anytime we have a feast of a saint, we like Saint Mary who had the Nahda, same thing with Nairuz or Saint Mark, the patron saints of the church, we can do procession. I'll talk about the processions of the big feast. So we talked about resurrection, Holy 50 Days, Palm Sunday, Feast of the Cross. We also do 3 processions on Bright Saturday. Bright Saturday, again, it's a night of celebration. Okay, it's kind of a little bit sad for the crucifixion. That's why the hymns are kind of a mix. But we are celebrating the victory and the deliverance and the salvation. For people on earth, they did not see the good news or not hear the good news until 3 days after, on the third day, on Easter Sunday. But for those who were caught up in Hades, that good news was instantaneous. When Jesus descended into the Hades, I want to say this every liturgy, He descended into the Hades through the cross. For them, that was that was instant good news. And some of especially in the Greek traditions, they draw the resurrection icon, not just Christ coming out of the tomb with the Marys or with the angel. They draw what we call the Anastasis icon, where actually Christ is pulling Adam and Eve from Hades, and the locks and chains of Hades are being broken, and all the Old Testament characters are there, New Testament characters are there. It's a very theological icon, because icons are not just a snapshot what happened, but sometimes you see like a story in an icon or some teaching in an icon. Um, so it was a night of celebration for those who were. He told the thief on the cross that today you'll be with me in paradise. But before the cross made it to paradise, somebody beat him to it. And those are the souls of Adam, Eve, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, David, Noah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, etc. So all these people managed to beat the thief on the cross. They beat him to paradise because Christ died before the two thieves. The thieves died after. They broke their feet, their knees, so that they die on the cross. But Christ died. When they came to break his knees, they found that he was dead. At that moment, his soul, united with the divinity, descended into Hades, and instead of being locked in Hades like everybody else, he unlocked Hades and took the righteous with him and took him to paradise. So there's a night of celebration. That's why we have, this is maybe the only time when we have multiple processions, one after the other after other. So we have 3 processions on Bright Saturday. طبعا there are details for all these processions and why we do them, but this is beyond the scope of tonight. But I just want to remind you that every time we have a procession, we have a zephyr, we have a good reason to celebrate. And we always go to the right of the church. One time only, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about. One time only, we go to the opposite. We will go to the left. And it's a very kind of interesting procession. Huh? No, not in Christmas. No. On Holy Thursday, we have what we call a Judas procession, where we sing the sad song of Judas, Judas, oh, you breaker of the law, how you did this to Christ. And actually, this is the only procession that we don't even start from the altar. We start from the chorus here because it's really it's a procession to condemn not just what Judas has done, but any betrayal for Christ. So we don't do it inside the altar at all, and we go the opposite way. And even they play the deaf with the opposite way, inside out. So it's just it's more like a protest, more than anything else. Protesting any betrayal of Christ, and we don't want to. It's not just Judas. Many people betray Christ, so we are against betraying Christ. We want to witness our faith no matter what. So this is the only procession. And again, the left here represents, again, nothing against lefties, but represents weakness. This was, we are remembered, rather than celebrating by the strength and power and joy, we are remembering the weakness of those who betray Christ. So every time you see a movement in church, it's for a reason. And whenever we see that circuit, we take the blessing. If we see an icon, take the blessing of the icon. If Abuna comes with just a center by himself, some people take the blessing of Abuna. Some people give Abuna a prayer request or ask Abuna for a special prayer or special absolution. And it's something for us that it's a blessing for all of us. I hope we understand what we're doing in church. It's very important that we don't just see and observe, but we understand so that we can benefit. To God be the glory now and forever, unto the end.